Hi. So yesterday I had the opportunity to go see Iron Lung, Markiplier's debut movie, and I have some thoughts. Initially, I was gonna make this like a quick, a dirty, like as soon as I saw it, I was gonna say things, but I really wanted to invest some time into collecting my thoughts because I respect Mark, I adore Mark, and I feel like as a fan of his, I should offer my actual thought out process. So here we go. If you don't know who Markiplier is, you must be living under a rock because Markiplier is one of the biggest YouTubers on the platform. He started in 2012 doing Let's Plays, and surprisingly enough, his channel did get deleted for some unknown reason, but he was able to bounce back pretty quickly. And if you're a Markiplier fan now, you know, duh, we're all on his platform. So in recent years, Mark has started to transition into acting. He's been doing a lot of more let's plays that are horror based, but he has these other projects such as Markiplier in Space and A Date with Markiplier. And it really shows that he has the talent and the energy to be an actor. However, with that being said, there is going to be kind of like a shakeup when you're moving from one medium to another. But with Mark being as creative as he is, and his platform and his fan base being as dedicated as he is, wherever he goes, we will follow. So, Iron Lung itself is a kind of an indie video game made by David Zemansky. Szymanski. I hope I pronounced that right. If not, whatever. Um, and Mark played that a few years ago. But prior to Iron Lung, Mark did have some acting experience off of YouTube. And I'm talking about Edge of Sleep. So, Edge of Sleep was a podcast that Mark was a voice actor in. And if you know Mark, or if you've heard Mark, you know he's got a velvety voice that can take you to another place. So, being a voice actor for a podcast made sense. Like, it was right up his alley. However, he also starred in the podcast turned TV series, I was supposed to say No Edge of Sleep, Edge of Sleep. That's where things started to shake up a bit, and that's where kind of his fan base and myself were kind of nervous about whether or not this would translate well into Iron Lung. Because in Edge of Sleep, Mark is a little stunted. I believe that there is kind of like this jump between an online comedy based like forum where you know what your people want, but if you're transitioning from comedy into like a drama slash what is it called, psychological thriller, there is going to be some type of acting that you've got to try to adjust. And within the first episode, many of his fans, mine included, kind of noticed that Mark seemed like he was aware he was acting, and that was coming off a little harsh. It also didn't help that his co-stars were also a little stilted in their acting, but for a podcast turned TV series, there was a lot of money and production put into it. And I remember I saw it on Amazon first, but it has since been moved to Tubi, which is not a slight at Mark at all. Tubi is Tubi, but that was one of his first out of YouTube projects that we were able to see his acting prowess. So, with that being said, let's talk about Iron Lung. Iron Lung is Mark's baby. Mark has been working on this project for about some years, if not longer, because he may have announced it to us and didn't actually start doing anything until later. But it has been something he's spoken about for years now. On his Distractable podcast, talking with Wade and Bob about the different lenses he's getting, about the opportunities that he's been able to connect with. It sounds really good. So all of his fans walked into the screen hopefully he got some classes outside of Edge of Sleep, and also we really want the best for him. So when I talk about this, I want it to be known that I still will support Mark in anything he does. However, Iron Lung is a bit rough around the edges. Mark did say in his Distractable podcast that he had the opportunity to work with some big production companies to kind of get it rolling. In fact, there was an episode where he was speaking that he was able to use the Warner Brothers soundstage to mix Iron Lung. That is huge for an indie creator to have access to those systems. So he definitely had some money in it. And for a movie that roughly cost about $3 million to make, Mark has made that back this past weekend. And more than likely he'll make more because Markiplier's fans are loyal. But Iron Lung itself is a very hard story to tell because it is essentially a closed circle trope. Mark is only in the sub the entire movie, the entire 2 hour movie. Mark is in this sub. And spoilers if you don't want to hear about the movie, but to be completely honest, there's really not many spoilers because there's not much of a plot. And that goes hand in hand with the closed circle trope. There are times where there's flashbacks and allusions to what he was before this character, but at the end of the day, it is all happening in one confined space, which could be very detrimental to an actor like Mark, who is kind of developing those skills. It does benefit that he doesn't have anyone else on set because then we don't have anything to compare it to. But when it's just him, he has to be the actor, the supporter, everything. And if you've heard about him talk about this, he did do everything. So knowing that Mark wrote, directed, starred, I'm giving him a bit of leniency. But for something that was grassroots campaign to get on the screens, we were kind of expecting a little more. So Mark initially was able to get this movie into some smaller screens. I actually had to drive about an hour away to see it. I had bought my tickets in December when we found out that it was coming out. And since then, he has encouraged, and not necessarily needing to, his fan base to request the movie be seen in other theaters. Awesome. So honestly, if I would have waited a week, it probably would have been somewhere closer. But I say that is a reflection of his fan base. We will support Mark. So, going into Iron Lung, the story itself is pretty cut and dry. This person is put into a sub. They are a convict. They, instead of going to prison, they're supposed to help with this expedition. And apparently the entire universe has been decimated. There's only a few people left of these blood oceans. It's, picture it like you're on a stranded island. So that means that a lot of the story has to be conveyed to you in exposition. That's another issue with the movie I have. The exposition is a lot, but it doesn't really tell you much. Furthermore, every other word in the movie was fuck. And I know that the movie's rated R, but I'm like, geez Louise, honeybees, you can do a little better, Mark. And even with that, the story was a bit bloated. There were quite a few storylines that I'm like, why am I supposed to care about that? Who are these people? In fact, there's a point closer to the end of the movie where we find out the man's name, Mark's character's name is Simon, and he was considered Simon the Butcher because he was a part of, I'm assuming, some rebellion? Like, that's the thing. Like, I can't even give you much information because a lot of that was not in the story. Additionally, the audio was kind of rough. There were points where I felt like there was information that needed to be said, and I'm trying to listen for it. I'm like, what? Because the ambiance, the audio around that is loud. So that also has me a little nervous about the use of the Warner Brothers mixing stage. Did he have professional assistance? Because it can be a bit rough. Now, I will say this with all my heart. I hope Mark does another movie. But I think that horror, especially horror where you are the star, it is very hard to do. And he did his best. And I spent the money. I was excited as soon as I found out because I thought this was going to be another year before this movie came out. But I really recommend for Mark to leverage the fact that his platform is thirsty. In fact, Mark has used his, sexiness in the past. He has an OnlyFans that currently only has about 2 or 3 photos, and he owes us a photo. Mark, you owe us a photo. You owe us one more photo. But the fact that, people flocked to buy his OnlyFans, which we didn't see much. We saw, it was cheeky. It was classy. But I think that Mark doesn't see himself as the romantic lead. But that is who he is. So, Mark, I'm asking you, the next movie you do, I don't care if you write, direct, star, I don't care. But I think you will be great in a romance. Because the thirst of your fan base will quench your pockets, babe. Because we're gonna go see it. But also at the end of the day, he is a horror Let's Player. That is his platform. That is why we love him. That's where we came from. But if he's going to be doing these outside bigger projects, he might need to dip his toe in a little area that's more aligned with what we want to see from him. But either way, I do think I do recommend you go see Iron Lung. It is worth your time. It is long, but if you like Markiplier and you like him being broody, it's the movie for you. Yeah. Yay! Okay, I'm done.